Good morning. It is Thursday, March 15th. This is a pretty power-packed filled day. And let's see, the 15th of March, this is a payday. I just left the city office and paid the utilities there. My friend that I was talking about that's having back surgery tomorrow got moved to today, so he's having that surgery today. So those of you out there, I asked you pray for him today. Hopefully this will give him some relief once and for all. I just tweaked my back here recently, and I thought I was as miserable. I couldn't imagine him going every day with pain like that. So for who knows how long now. So hopefully this finally gives him the relief he needs and that. But the 15th of March, it's amazing how I can't remember what I ate for lunch yesterday, let alone something years ago. But this day, 26 years ago today, I remember details from it that I'll never forget, and it's probably because that was the day I had a motorcycle wreck. So let me start from the beginning. I was 15 years old. It was a chilly day, much like today, and went to school. The really only thing I remember from school, though, was literature class, which is crazy because literature was definitely not my strong suit. I was a math guy, still am a math guy, even though now as an adult I do enjoy reading. I did not then, and especially Shakespeare's Julius Caesar that we were studying in literature right then. And there's a line in there that says, beware the Ides of March. And of course, in literature class, when you have something like that, you have to discuss what it is. And I'll be honest, I don't remember all the details of that, except for that in the context of Julius Caesar, it was meant to be a warning of something bad. So, ironically enough, that day, I get home from school, and as I do often after school, if I can get away with not doing homework as soon as I got home, which is another topic, but I'll get to that later. If I get away with, if either I didn't have homework or could get away with putting it off for a little while, I would go and ride my motorcycle with my buddy Mark. And that particular day was not an exception. It was it wasn't a super cold day. It was chilly, but it was one of the first nicer days of the year probably, and we decided to dig out our dirt bikes and go for a ride. Well, that particular ride was, I broke a couple of rules. One was, my dad told me not to ride my motorcycle on the road again until I got the taillight fixed on my motorcycle. I think from the time I got it, was a used enduro, like a 1976, in enduro on-road off-road little motorcycle. So I don't know that the taillight ever worked. If it did, at this point in its history, it did not. And he'd always told me, don't ride on the road, especially after dark, without getting your taillight fixed. Well, I hadn't gotten it fixed. In addition to that, he really didn't want me to ride on the road anyway, because I was 15. I didn't even have a driver's license. The motorcycle itself was not licensed. So he didn't like me riding on the road at all. But if I was going to, it wasn't going to be done until after I had, fixed the taillight. Well, I hadn't had the taillight fixed. It was after dark. It was on the road. And so all those things combined, I was breaking all sorts of rules that my dad laid out, plus the law. And this particular day, it was evening, so, but I'm guessing time change hadn't happened then or something. Either way, because it was dark, it was getting dark, and my dad would have been home by 5 or 6 o'clock at that time. And so anyway, we were out riding, and there's a particular part of this road that has a jog in it. So for those of you who are not familiar with jogs in the road, it's basically you have a road that goes straight, and then it curves just slightly and goes, basically not changing direction, but you're jogging over. So it'd be kind of the equivalent of changing a lane on a highway, but the whole road just changes that much. So basically it moves over the width of the road. And so there's this jog on the road. Again, ridden this road hundreds of times, and done this jog hundreds of times. Well, to top things off, not only was I doing all these things I wasn't supposed to do, but I knew in the evening there's bugs. And especially in the spring, and if you don't have some sort of eyewear, you're going to get bugs in your eyes. So I try to wear a pair of goggles. Well, I had a pair of goggles that I would typically wear, which were great in the daytime because they were tinted. But here we were in the evening, if not at night, tinted goggles, on the road, age 15, illegally, breaking my dad's rules. I mean, there was all sorts of stupidity going on in this. And as it is, we would typically do, and it was fun, when we come to that jog, we would, for whatever reason, we would speed up a little bit and zip through the jog like we were some sort of racers. Who knows what sort of 15-year-old stupidity I was thinking. But I get to that jog, and I zig and I zag a little too soon. So instead of making to the road, I bloop off of basically this culvert that goes through there, and I off into the ditch, going fairly fast at this point. And I'm holding on, and I'm trying to get control, and all of a sudden, I seem to have control. I'm like, yes, I got this. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I don't know if there was a hole in the ditch or a big rock in the ditch, something in the ditch that caught my front tire, and it stopped, but I didn't. I flew over the handlebars. Oh, and to make things even worse, do you think I was wearing a helmet? No, of course not. Granted, in Illinois, there's not a law that you have to wear a helmet, but nevertheless, I was on a dirt bike after dark without a taillight at the age of 15. So to add to it, with tinted goggles, to add to it, I didn't have a helmet on. I'm not even sure. I'm sure I did, but I don't even know if I owned a helmet. I know if I did have one, I never wore it. My buddy seemed to wear his a lot more than I did. But regardless, that day there was no helmet. At some point during the tumbling, I hit my head and scraped it up real good. Got a bunch of road rash in my leg and knee, and my buddy, I think, was more freaked out than I was. I was in pain, and it knocked the wind out of me. Once I caught my breath, I was dizzy. I couldn't stand up. I did crawl, because when I stopped, I was in the middle of the road. I did manage to crawl my way out of the road into the ditch, and my buddy pulled my motorcycle off the side of the road, and he's trying to help me. I'm like, hey, we're not far from home. Just go get my parents and come back. He was like freaking out, and understandably, again, he was 15. We were both 15, and I think he was slightly older than me, maybe. But either way, there was a lot of freaking out going on, and so I told him to go. He speeds off in his motorcycle, probably fastest I've ever seen him, and to go get help. A few minutes later, he comes back, or I hear his motorcycle, because he had a even though his wasn't a 2-cycle engine like mine, it was still fairly high strung. I heard it coming, and following behind I see my dad's pickup truck. And evidently my dad had gotten home just at the same time that he came speeding up the driveway like a crazy person, and brings my dad and gets me in there, and they get me home. My mom was the neighbors. They grabbed my mom. Anyway, it's decided that I need to go to the hospital, and at least get checked out, see if I need, concussion, all that good stuff, So I had this bath towel held on my head to keep the bleeding. Again, I think it wasn't like the blood just seemed more scary than it was, I believe. But as a parent, and your 15-year-old just had a motorcycle accident and bleeding all over the place, so she takes me to the hospital, and the motorcycle accident was painful, don't get me wrong, but it didn't hurt nearly as much as them trying to clean me up. They showed me afterwards, they had this sponge that they're using on my knee that had actual wire woven through it to help get that out. And I'm just like, they had actually given me a shot in the wound in my knee, like actually in the wound to try and numb it before they cleaned it. But it's still, that probably hurt as much as anything. It always gets me, you go someplace, the shot, granted, I guess I don't know because I've never felt the experience without the shot, but those shots are like horrible, painful. But I guess, again, it's less pain than if, I didn't have it, I guess. But anyway, so obviously anytime there is a accident that's on the road, you go to the hospital, you report it, especially back then, they had to report it, to the police. Well, the police officer comes to take my mom's statement, and I remember him asking her, okay, so tell me what happened, or he said, tell me where this happened. He said, and before you answer, let me tell you. He said, if this happened on your own property, obviously I'll write up the report, it'll be the end of it. He said, if this happened on an actual road, your son being underage, doesn't have license, on a motorcycle that was not licensed, and having had an accident, he said, if this happened on a road, I'm going to be forced to throw the book at him, and most likely he'd have to spend at least one night in jail, even as a 15-year-old, I guess. Or maybe it's just his tactic of scaring him. But this is the only time in my life that I can remember. I'm sure my mother has told lies in her life other than this, but this is the only time I have ever known my mom to lie. And I'm sure she justified it by the fact that she knew that the police officer knew the truth. But she's like, yes, it happened on our own property. Kind of wink, wink. And she's like, all right. And he wrote that down. But it's the only time in my life that I know of that my mother has told a lie. But anyway, that was my Ides of March experience from 26 years ago today. So for those of you who've already done the math, yes, I am 41, if I haven't already told you that. Actually, I think I probably told you that in a previous video. But yeah, I will remember that day forever. So there's not many things as vivid as that. So I suppose if you are a 15-year-old who gets in a motorcycle accident, you're going to remember those things. But yeah, so I thought I'd share that today. Again, a light subject, I guess. At least not a deep subject. Not so light as much as deep. Shallow. Okay. Anyway, I don't know. I'm going to shut up now. Anyway, thank you guys for listening to me ramble another day. Again, you all know what to do. If you like it, subscribe, all that good stuff. Either way, I'm not doing this for all the fame. I'm just doing it because it gives me something to do on the way to work that's slightly more productive, I guess, than listening to things that don't matter, like listen to people play D&D. I don't know. Anyway, go ahead and subscribe, and either way, I will talk to you guys on another day. Take care. Bye.